So I'm going over the build. I really hope they don't nerf this build. This staff warrior is actually one of the builds that when they said that they were going to create a staff or give warrior staff, this is exactly what I was hoping for, was a weapon that has somewhat support but isn't going to replace any of the supports in the current meta like Firebrand. And it becoming more of like a self-sustained weapon with a little bit of application for team fights, such as like, but I'll go over the weapon skills, why it can be used in a team fight. So what I would say, this build, the warrior staff build that's currently meta, is right now somewhat of a hybrid in my opinion. It focuses primarily as a duelist, but if it needs to be in a team fight, it's actually not completely useless because the staff will be able to give some cleansing and healing, more or less healing, and like boons as well as unblockables. So it's traditionally very similar to the old Spellbreaker build. You're going to typically go defense, discipline, and Spellbreaker. Now for defense, I would typically go top and then middle. So top would be Shield Master. Basically, when you're blocking, you reflect anything that's a projectile, what they call missiles, and you gain adrenaline when you block an attack or reflect a missile. Why I use that? So defense, the minor traits, you're going to get protection when using a healing skill. That's going to help you be a little bit more tankier. You're going to gain health with adrenal stage every time you spend adrenaline, with a maximum stack of 4 adrenal stages, or 4 stacks. So that would be considered adrenaline stage 3. And then hardened armor. So like resolution when you block or struck by a critical hit, which is really, really nice because it's going to help prevent Conti damage. So you get kind of a lot of utility off of this to be able to fight many different builds without having to swap many traits. But as I said, Shield Master, the reflect doesn't just work off of like a sword block like this or this kind of block, but it also works off whenever you get Aegis. So when you use staff 3, you get the Aegis for 3 seconds that actually reflects missiles as well. Why this is super useful is because the whole mechanic behind warrior is to spend adrenaline. So if you are using your blocks to gain adrenaline, then that's only going to help you create more openings to be able to use your F1 and then also your full counter. The resistance when you dodge is helpful as well. That is really cool because you actually don't need to be in combat for this to happen, and there's no internal cooldown. So you can technically, I mean, it's not advised, but you can technically double dodge and stack the resistance for 15 seconds, right? So that's really useful if you're fighting anything that's going to be blind spamming you for like eternity, such as a Hollowsmith. Blinds do make this build relatively useless because you do have a lot of melee damage. So if you're blinded, you will not be able to do much to your opponents. And then the Cleansing Ire. So sometimes people like to do Stalwart Strength to gain stability when you disable foe because it does synergize well with Spellbreaker. But Cleansing Ire is more of like a catch-all. Whenever you're fighting, if you really want to just have more of like a cookie cutter that's going to be useful everywhere, the Cleansing Ire will remove conditions whenever you use a burst skill. So I think it's like adrenaline spent is going to be like 1 for every bar. So since you have these 2 bars here, you would get the 2, right? On top of that, so we'll go with Discipline. Discipline on Warrior. In 99% of the builds, other than like Bladesworn, you really have to run Discipline. You become very handicapped if you don't, because of the adrenaline on weapon swap, the 5 seconds on weapon swap, and then the might on weapon swap as well. So this gives Warrior like a competitive advantage. No other class can swap every 5 seconds besides Warrior. It also, the traits that I typically go with in this line is going to be middle on bottom on Discipline, because the middle is going to help you, 1, you run faster, and then 2, whenever you get immobilized, movement skills remove immobilization. So it's really hard to lock down a Warrior. There's so many skills that give you movement, like Dagger 2, the Dagger Breaching Strike as well. Bull's Charge whenever you're in Rampage, like basically 2, 3, 5. They're all movement skills. And then on Staff, you have 2, and then you have 3. So you have a lot of movement skills there to be able to prevent yourself from getting immobilized. Also, no internal cooldown there. And also, when you deal increased strike damage when you have swiftness. So that comes into play a little bit later, right? Brawler's Recovery, you remove a condition when you weapon swap. So basically every 5 seconds you can get 1 Condi cleansed. And then Burst Mastery deals more damage and grants swiftness and restores a portion of your adrenaline spent. So it's kind of like recycling your adrenaline, but also the swiftness and the damage increase. Damage increase is nice, and the swiftness is going to help with this, right? This is going to give you more strike damage when you have swiftness. So it synergizes well. And you can kind of understand why I was saying the build's not out yet, George, but it will be shortly. Okay, that... I'm going to mute that for a second. But I appreciate the follow, Tired Mind. So that's why I say Discipline is really a trait line that isn't something you can give up on Warrior unless you're Bladesworn. Spellbreaker, you're going to go bottom, top, bottom. For this build specifically, I mean, you could go middle if you want more sustain, and then more damage is going to be top there. But really, the bottom trait line is going to help you more in duels and fights. So right now, the minor traits, right? The full counter, it absorbs an attack, gives you stability, does damage, removes conditions. Also dazes opponent. It is unblockable. So there's a lot that goes on with the full counter. The Dispel Force, it dazes, it stuns. So dazes, stuns, knockdowns, pull, anything that basically makes your opponent unable to do anything is going to remove boons. And then when disabling foes or removing boons, your full counter refreshes all bursts on hit. So what that means, right, is that you can use like a breaching... if you have 2 bars of adrenaline, you can use your F1, and then if you have... it'll use 1. And then if you have full counter, you can full counter, and if your full counter hits, it's going to refresh the cooldown of F1. So you can play it to where you F1, full counter F1, and it does a ton of damage to an opponent. Now, as I said, no escape, dazing, and stuns inflict immobilize. This helps you lock down opponents and allow you to put your burst on them, because immobilize does not allow them to dodge roll unless they're a mirage, which is probably why it's difficult to fight mirages. Loss aversion, removing boons from a foe deals damage and gives you adrenaline. This is also kind of broken because it is unblockable. So you can kind of, sometimes I've seen people actually interrupt a full counter with the loss aversion ability because it is unblockable, and some other stuff. Magebane Tether. So every time you land an adrenaline skill, I'll just show you real quick. Right. So we'll attack this, right? Every time you land, god damn it. Okay, we're gonna not mess this up. Every time you land this, you get this tether. Now this tether is gonna do a few different things. It's gonna gain might. It's gonna pulse might. And you see 6, 7 stacks there. It also keeps your enemies close to you, because if they end up going out of 600 range, then it pulls them back to you, right? So you have that. You walk away, and then it pulls them to you. All right. The next one is it also reveals enemies. So if you hit this, this is good against classes that can stealth. They are not able to stealth for, I think it's 3 seconds whenever you land that. So it keeps them guessing as to or keeps them on their toes, because it's kind of like a knockout blow if you catch a thief out of stealth. Sometimes, especially if they're running a specific build that's gonna get that they need a lot of stealth for. This is basically what I'll run for my weapons, my amulet, my relic. Sometimes I'll switch the rune, and I'll explain that in a minute. But Berserker Amulet is probably the best for any build right now in terms of a duelist or warrior. You don't need that much toughness, and it shouldn't be, your amulet shouldn't be used to stack vitality or toughness, anything. You should just go full power with this. The relic I use is Garen because it synergizes well with this build. Basically, after evading an enemy attack, you place this thing called like the eye, whatever, of Isgarin on them for duration, and you deal increased strike damage and condition damage. So, it really, when you do a full counter, you are evading an attack. So, when you do that, it's gonna actually pop and do 10% more damage on them for, I believe it's 6 seconds as well. So damage increases and then duration increases by 10%. The rune can be interchanged. I'll either use Spellbreaker or Rune of the, I think it's Fighter. Rune of the Fighter. They kind of do the same thing. They'll give you the same amount of power, but the toughness and vitality are what I'll swap out. It just depends. If I feel that my opponents are going to be very Condi heavy, I will use Spellbreaker so I can have more life, and the life's going to be able to allow me to take more condition damage. But if they're very power focused, then I'll use the Fighter rune because the Fighter rune is actually going to give me toughness, and the toughness is going to allow me to be able to, take more of their damage. And I could tell you, it's very annoying to fight this when you have that extra level of toughness and the protection that you get from the healing skills, plus also your staff, right? So the weapons again. So I use dagger, sword, offhand, dagger, main hand, and then staff. I use intelligence sigil. So on weapon swap, you get 100% critical chance, I believe, for 3 attacks. Then energy sigil. This is going to help me with endurance so I can dodge. I'll typically, I don't know why. So I know, okay, I'll explain. Let me explain. These are wrong. It should be this. It should be, I use cleansing. And on the other one, because I was running a hammer build. So yeah, that's my fault. And I'll also use exploitation. So this could be swapped out for whatever you want. Like you could use absorption if you want, but this works well for me. Like I said, absorption, steal a boon when you interrupt an enemy. That is very useful. There's also revocation. Revocation stacks well because it on hit removes a boon, so it's basically guaranteed extra damage there. If you like stun duration, you can use savagery for stun foes and damage increase for them. So there's a lot that you can mess with, but this is typically what my stack is. Yes, and IRL warrior. And then in terms of intel energy on dagger sword, yeah, that's what I'll typically run. Or sometimes I'll swap cleansing because if I want to do I'll probably do cleansing and energy on staff. So the reason why is in case I get blinded or have something. Both weapons are really strong, so it could be interchanged, right? Your staff isn't just defensive. It has a lot of power right now as well. So you could do either or. No, don't do energy on both because you have a 5-second weapon swap. So if you actually will not gain any value on having energy on both because there's a 9-second cooldown on it. So if you swap to staff and then you swap back, you're not going to get the extra boon. It's just wasting a sigil spot. So I would do cleansing on dagger shield and then energy on staff. So, and it's good to separate them too for that reason. Like if you keep it all on staff, you're going to have one weapon swap where you gain no value. And then, so the utility abilities here. So I'll run Mending. Mending is probably one of the best healing skills because you remove 5 conditions, you gain protection, and it's got a really short cooldown. Then I'll also use Shake It Off. This cures conditions. It also stun breaks, so you can remove 4 conditions. It breaks stun. And then it also breaks stun for affected allies, right? So it's kind of some hidden tech that people don't realize that you can do. You can break your friend's stun. But I mean, it's like 1 in 10 chances. Probably like 1 out of 100 games I may use it for a teammate because they have their own stun breaks. Now, Endure Pain is going to be for no damage taken from physical attacks. You can still die from condis and you can still get CC'd, but it does break your stun as well. Has a 40-second cooldown. It lasts for 3 seconds with no damage. And then Bull's Charge. This is nice because it removes immobilize, like I said. You evade for 1.25 seconds. It's a combo finisher. You also knock down your opponent for 3 seconds. So there's a lot that this one skill can do. It can be a really good finisher for you. And then Rampage. Rampage is basically just going to allow you to turn into a giant monster. It's going to give you all these abilities like kick, so you can knock people down, rush, that does a ton of damage as well. You can throw boulder at your opponents to stun them, and then you can leap and just knock them down. As far as the weapons, you're going to use, as I said, dagger, the first one. So when you chain this, the first one is going to do, I hate it. So you gain might on your second hit, or third hit, I'm sorry. God, I hate that it does that. Strike your foe, attacks increase with critical damage. So dagger 1 is going to be really useful when you have like fury and critical strike damage is also increased. Aura Slicer is 2. This is going to slow opponents and also remove immobilize. That's really useful when you're trying to like make sure that they can't like get off a really quick heal or something. Also, when you're trying to gap close, 3 is a really quick stun. I think it's what? Almost an instant cast for this. You just basically tap them. You immobilize them with it if you daze them. And so if you daze them without anything, it's 1.25 seconds. But if they're actually using a skill, then it's 1.5 seconds. It's 1/4 second for no if they're just standing there, but it's 1.5 seconds. So make sure that if you want to use this, that your opponent's using a skill. Don't just try to like use it out of nothing unless you know that you're gonna get the kill, right? The sword is really useful. It's better than a shield because you still get the block, right? And then if somebody hits you with your block, then you're gonna hit them with what's like the riposte or whatever, and that can do a ton of damage to them. Like it can hit them for like 6k depending on your stacks. And then impale, I like sword because you can throw it. It does insane damage when you hit, and if you have might as well. I've hit for 7k on when I rip out my sword on some people. Like it basically one shots them. Staff. Staff is very useful. And let's actually go back actually because I got to go through Breaching Strike. Breaching Strike is your F1 skill. This will this can also, depending on how you stack it, can do a ton of damage because when you strike your opponent and remove boons, you deal more damage if your target has no boons. So if you can already move all their boons and then you hit them with it, it can like 3k is a pretty decent amount just for that one ability. It also removes immobilize, gives you swiftness, and also removes another condition, right? The full counter, as I said, absorbing attack and everything. Going into staff, so your staff 1 does just a regular strike, can hit up to 3 people. You do a follow-up strike, but then on your third one, you gain regeneration. So it's always good if you are just like not trying to waste cooldowns. If you're just trying to do regular damage, just keep hitting them with auto attacks because you'll constantly be popping the regeneration, which is obviously going to keep you alive longer. 2 is also going to remove immobilize. It is a leap. It's going to do damage and it's going to heal. Plus you gain adrenaline if you affect another ally, and you gain might and fury. So you jump in, boom, you gain might and fury. You do damage, right? 3 is called Line Breaker. Now this heals, gives you protection, it gives you Aegis, it gives you unblockable, and also puts weakness on the enemy, and it can remove immobilize. So if you come up and just hit it like that, you get all your skills, and they get weakness. You can launch it forward if you want to run, because I believe it's got a, I believe it's like 1200 range for the run. But if you want to just pop it on yourself, put it right by your feet and it'll pop right by you, right? You just run, boom. But you can also just look at your feet, hit it right there, and it'll pop. 4 is really nice because it can pull people to you. It's also really useful when someone's trying to run away and heal, and it's got a really decent range. So 600 range is basically right where I'm at. You can pull somebody away from you like that. So let me show you the 3 again. Boom, right at the feet, you get it automatically. And then 5 is called Bullet Catcher. You block incoming attacks, and then once you block them, you can get this thing called Defiant Roar. So you would just pop it there, boom, and then you get this Defiant Roar. If you got hit, it actually increases that. So it also keeps you alive longer. And then the burst skill that people for some reason don't realize has like a really decent range. It's 450 range, which means I think it's around the same as a greatsword. It could be a little bit longer. But this will give you regen, it'll give you healing, it'll give them weakness, it'll give you swiftness, it'll remove mobilize and remove conditions just because of the cleansing eye, right? But you can hit them from here, like that far away with that. And you get all those boons. So that's basically the rundown of this build here. Like I said, if you play it, I would play it now because I do have a feeling ArenaNet is going to end up nerfing this build very heavily, which is going to suck. But I think it's really good to just play with right now. And I'll just show you while I play this.